Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This week for my Game of Thrones video, I wanted to talk all about the Sand Snakes. If you saw my video last week, I explained some of the changes that the show is making to the books. Today, I'm going to talk about all 8 of them. They're the 8 bastard daughters of Oberyn Martell from various women. The show is only doing 3 of them though. When I get to the 5 that were cut out, I'll just also talk about why I think that they chose not to use them on the show, and what I think it means for the story in Season 5 versus the books. There were also some big spoilers that posted for specific characters, as well as a really notable scene that I'll explain whenever I get to the spoiler portion of the video. If you're just finding me for the first time, I do weekly Game of Thrones videos. I even do a weekly book giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. So if you've never heard of the Sand Snakes, they're Oberyn's daughters. Oldest to youngest, they are Obara, Nymeria, Tyene, Sarella, Elia, Obella, Dorea, and Loreza. The youngest of the 4 belonging to Ilaria, the woman that you saw Oberyn with in Season 4, played by Indira Varma. We're not going to meet any of the other Sand Snakes' mothers, but I'll talk about them whenever I'm talking about each of the characters. The show is only focusing on Obara, Nymeria, and Tyene, the oldest ones. So because most of you probably haven't read the books, I'm going to talk about all of them, oldest to youngest, and then I'll save the spoilery stuff for the end. And I'll also talk about some cool theories about Winds of Winter. Jar Jar Martin did explain at Comic-Con that all of the Sand Snakes will have really big roles in that book. So first off is Obara Sand. She's the oldest. She's being played by Keisha Castle-Hughes on the show. If you look at the fan art version of her from the card game, she looks very different. I know this will bug some of the book readers, but the show does this all the time. For instance, Ysand in the book is supposed to look like Jabba the Hutt, and on the show, this is what the actor playing him looks like. It's just another day in television. Keisha Castle-Hughes is a great actress, so I'm glad that they cast her. I think she will go through the same type of fight training that they gave to Pedro Pascal. They actually posted some cool videos of him learning to use the weapon. Obara in the books always reminded me of a colder version of Brienne, more militaristic and cunning, so she is also going to be very handy with a spear. Regardless of the way the show treats her backstory, Obara's mother was just a common whore from Old Town. Her name is never mentioned, but whenever Obara was old enough, Oberyn came to claim her. He threw a spear down at her feet and asked Obara to choose between it and her mother, and she chose the spear, so it gives you an idea of what kind of life she prefers. As an adult, her weapons of choice are the signature spear that you saw Oberyn use during his fight with the Mountain, a whip, and a round shield. Whenever we first meet her in Book 4, she's described as being about 30 years old and big boned, meaning she looks kind of like Brienne. She's a warrior, she's a big fighter, which is why I was a little surprised when they cast Keisha Castle-Hughes. She probably just blew them away in the casting session, so I am optimistic. All of the Sand Snakes have very hot tempers, but because Obara has lived such a martial life, she prefers the military life. She respects authority. That's a big contrast to her half-sister, Princess Arianne, but the show's not doing her, so it's not a big deal. I'll wait till I get to the spoiler section to talk a little bit about how I think the show is going to change Obara's character. But moving on, Sand Snake number 2 is Nymeria. She's being played by Jessica Henwick on the show. She's about 5 years younger than Obara, and her mother was a highborn woman from Volantis. That's actually one of the free cities from the eastern continent. It's south of Braavos, but it's still really far away from Slaver's Bay, where Daenerys is on the show. In the book, she's described as looking more like what you'd expect a highborn person to look like. Very pale skin, very beautiful, very high cheekbones. Imagine a more sinister version of Sansa, which is kind of funny because Sansa just dyed her hair black like Nymeria at the end of Season 4. Maybe she'll take up daggers too. Just to explain, Nymeria's weapon of choice is the dagger. She carries several on her though. Because it's HBO, and Dan and Dave got really salacious with Oberyn's bisexuality, they'll probably show Nymeria as bisexual too. It's implied in Book 4 that she's a lesbian, but I don't think that she or Oberyn thought of it in those terms. I think that they both really just liked having sex with whoever caught their eye, and sometimes it was men, sometimes it was women. If you're a fan of Torchwood, think of it like Captain Jack. Anything that moves. Her temper is a little bit worse than Obara's, and because she's highborn, she has a little less respect for authority. On the show, you could probably expect her reaction to Oberyn's death to be the craziest of all the Sand Snakes. Again, there's some other interesting things that I think the show is going to do with her that I'll mention during the spoiler section. Moving on to Sand Snake number 3, Tyene. She's being played by Rosabelle Sellers on the show. In the book, she reminds me a lot of Arya if the Starks had not been split up. Tyene's the daughter of a Septa. It's implied that she's from Highgarden. We never find out what her mother's name is either, but there are some theories that I'll explain in a second. They're actually pretty interesting. In the books, it doesn't say that she's from Highgarden, it just implies that Princess Arianne and some other Sand Snakes go to visit her mother in that area. In order to get there, they had to cross the Mander, and that's the river that flows through the Reach where Highgarden is. There was also this incident later when Tyene and Arianne plotted to marry Arianne to Willis Tyrell. That's Loras' older brother. He's the heir to Highgarden, but he's a cripple with a bad leg. It's not something the show's going to deal with because the show isn't doing Arianne, but I think it's just a nice coincidence because Arianne's father, Prince Turan, is also a cripple. Tyenne's weapon of choice is poisons, just like her father, Oberyn. The show paid homage to it during Tyrion's trial whenever we saw that kid coating Oberyn's spear in poison before the fight. So here's a really cool theory about Tyenne's mother. It just ties her to another major house in Westeros. The two best theories that I've seen are Septa Lemore and one of the Waynwoods. Parentage and bloodlines in Game of Thrones is very complicated. Everyone is a complete whore in the best possible way, of course. There are countless people on the show that are closely related to other big characters from other great houses without knowing it. It's just because everyone's parents were every bit the whores that Cersei, Jaime, and all the younger people are right now. So do not be surprised if you find out that certain characters on the show are related to each other, even if they're from other houses. The reason that Tyene might be an heir to the Great House is because she might be the granddaughter of Alis Arryn and Ellis Waynwood. The show didn't really go into those characters, but Alis is the sister of Jon Arryn, father of Robin, who we have met. The Septa Lemore theory is a bit more conjecture. There's more evidence for the Waynwood theory. So all this evidence for the Waynwood theory comes from Feast for Crows, chapter 41, or Elaine 2, depending on which copy of the book you're reading. The Waynwoods had two daughters that both became septas. One of those daughters was seduced by a sellsword and had a child. It's possible that that sellsword was really Oberyn Martell, and the Waynwoods just covered it up to avoid a scandal. Tyene would have been born around the time that Elia Martell was betrothed to Rhaegar Targaryen, so it's possible that to avoid a scandal with Dorne and the crown, the Waynwoods covered up the true identity of the sellsword and said that the child died. It's not ironclad evidence or anything, but Tyene is one of 8 daughters, and her supposed grandmother, Alis Arryn, is one of 8 daughters. It could just be a coincidence, but George R. R. Martin could have intended for us to draw that conclusion. And also, if you have read the books and you know who Harry Harding is, he's a proven Arryn, and he and Tyene both have the same signature dimples on their face. It's not a theory that I think is going to bear any fruit on the show, it's just a really interesting subplot in the books. In real life history, things like this happened all the time. People from noble families had bastards with other prominent families, and they covered it up just to avoid a scandal. But here's a really crazy tinfoil theory. What if Oberyn Martell was whoring himself out all over the world as part of some sort of long con plan? Like he intentionally created heirs connected to specific major powers in the East and major houses in Westeros. Usually alliances are made with marriage and children, but they're all bastards, so I don't think that's what was really going on. I think he was just a man whore. It's just fun to think that he intentionally created a Dornish heir to the Eyrie. It's just a really big, powerful area in Westeros. Tyene is the last Sand Snake that the show is doing, but the other 5 are still really interesting. Sorella is the next Sand Snake. Her mother was a trader from the Summer Isles. We don't hear what her mother's name is, but we do know that she is the captain of a ship called the Feathered Kiss. So in case you forgot, the Summer Isles is where Grey Worm is supposed to be from, so Sorella would have the same dark skin as he does. There is a really cool theory from Book 4 that Sorella is secretly masquerading as a character named Alaris in Old Town. Mostly because Alaris is Sorella spelled backwards. But because a lot of you probably haven't read Book 4 yet, I won't talk about her character too much, just because Alaris, that mystery character, crosses paths with people on the show. The reason that they probably didn't cast her on the show is because her part is really small and she doesn't really show up till the end of Book 4, but because she does cross paths with main characters that are on the show right now, they might cast her for season 6 or 7. But moving on, the 4 daughters of Ellaria Sand. So the rest of the Sand Snakes all belong to the same woman, Ellaria, the woman we met on the show. Ellaria is a bastard like Jon Snow, but she is the daughter of a noble house. Her father is Lord Harmon Uller. They're bannermen to the Martells, so she and her children do descend from royalty, but they are still named as bastards. The reason the show isn't doing her children is because they have even smaller parts in books 4 and 5. Elia is the oldest. She's about 14, which makes her pretty close to Arya's age. She's supposed to have a big storyline with Arianne Martell in Winds of Winter though, so you can look forward to that. Next is Obella. She's about 12. Then there's Dorea. She's about 8. And Loreza, she's the youngest Sand Snake. She's about 7. So real quick, interesting side note about Ellaria's father, Lord Harmon. He ended up traveling to King's Landing for Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding, but the show did not cast him. They cut him out. But in the books, he was there for the Purple Wedding. He was there when it all went down. So now let's talk a little bit about the show and what it might be changing about some of these characters. Mostly the story is going to draw from books 4, some from book 5 for some characters. The show is probably going to be changing Obara, Nymeria, and Tyene to give them bigger parts than what they had in the books. If anything, they'll just take Arianne's story and give it to them. So here's where I need to get into specifics from book 4, so careful for spoilers if you haven't read it yet. Just skip forward in the video like 45 seconds, or if you don't care about spoilers, then don't worry, but I'll wait just a second. Okay, everybody ready? Here we go. So remember, in the book, Aerion wants to rally support for Myrcella to take the Iron Throne. Of all the characters directly involved in that plot, only Myrcella, Hoda, Obara, Tyene, Nymeria, and Prince Doran have been cast. Also, on the other side of that equation, there was a casting sheet that leaked that put some King's Landing characters in Dorne when they weren't there in the books. It showed Jaime and Bronn having a really big scene in Dorne, probably a battle scene. It's a vast departure from the books, but here's what I think that they're going to be doing. They'll still do the Myrcella rebellion plot. They'll probably just expand it and give Myrcella a bigger role. That's probably why they recast the actor. They probably just felt that Amy Richardson wasn't right for the expanded part that they had written. Nell Tiger Free is going to be the new Myrcella. They did the same thing with Tommen, so it's not a new thing. Game of Thrones recast actors all the time. So what they'll probably do is they'll probably swap the big battle with the Darkstar for Jaime and Bronn. I don't think they're going to chop off Myrcella's ear. They didn't chop off Tyrion's nose after Blackwater, but the big oh shit fight will still totally go down. They'll just subtract Eris Oakheart and the Darkstar and add Jaime and Bronn. That does raise a whole lot of questions about Jaime's whereabouts in Book 4 just because he's somewhere totally different in the books, but it makes sense that the show would narrow its focus to Dorne. I still think that Nymeria and Tyene are going to head back to King's Landing by the end of the season, and we'll see the crossover with the High Sparrow, being played by Jonathan Pryce. And just to address, there were some pictures from a very big scene being filmed at a bull ring in Spain. It's a little bit funny because there's the real life controversy over them filming in a live bullfighting ring that kind of parallels the in-book controversy of the fighting pits. It'll be a nice meta situation for people that have read the books and know what's going on. What was reported was they were filming a scene in a really big bull ring with actual bulls and a shitload of extras. I'm going to save that for a future video, but if you have read the books, you totally know what that scene is, so get excited. And please use spoiler tags if you're going to comment about it in the comments. So in related news, my next bonus video is going to be all about the Faceless Men. I know you guys have been requesting it for a long time, so be sure to subscribe to get it. I'm also going to be doing a Q&A video just because I'm starting to have a little bit extra time. I've got one more week left at my job. I'm so happy. I quit my job a while ago, but I still have like the rest of this week to go. But in the meantime, click here to learn about some of the big changes that they're making in Season 5 from the books, and click here to learn all about the Golden Company. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. High fives.